Bruh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to go over my overwhelming shield build with Kyle. There have been some changes this current season which allow overwhelming shield to be viable now versus before. If you look here, you'll notice that I have 31,000 shield, which is quite a lot, especially for Kyle and because of how his passive works. So let's talk about those changes and the mods that I'm currently using and how to play the build. Alright, so these are the mods that I'm currently using for my build. The obviously the most important mod to have here is Overwhelming Shield. Overwhelming Shield is a ultimate mod that fixes your max HP at 1 and increases your max shield by 26.8% of your max HP, which is quite a bit. Before, this was just an absolute dog water mod because instead of 26.8%, it only gave you 2%, which means that even at full investment for everything, you would actually end up with less overall shield than you would if you still had health and shield together, which kind of made no sense. Like, why would you use a mod if you're not going to gain anything from it? It doesn't really make any. It was nice at one point when the Kyle one-shot build existed because it gave you that little bit of extra, a little bit of extra shield, which would increase your damage. I was able to one-shot Gluttony like from nearly full health and shield with it, but that's neither here nor there. With the season 1 changes as well, they added what's called inversion reinforcement, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But with these together, overwhelming shield is a lot more viable. So again, because Kyle is like a tanky character, the mods that I'm currently using are increased HP, stim accelerant for more HP, and we don't use MP, which is there's no downside to using this. I also use MP conversion. Again, it reduces MP, but we don't use that, so it doesn't matter. While also reducing our cooldown. Cooldown reduction is really important because Kyle has pretty lengthy cooldowns at base. So his 4, for instance, has 60 seconds at base, 15 seconds for his 3, 2 seconds for his 2, and then the stack cooldown is 12 seconds on his 1. And the buff itself only lasts for 5 seconds. So we want to get all of these down to as low as possible so that way we can spam our abilities whenever we need to. It's a very active playstyle to play Kyle, and I'll show you guys a little bit on how I play him. You guys can mix it up a little bit and do what you want. I use HP conversion, the shield version. So with this, it does reduce your max HP, but out of all of the shield mods, it still because of the high amount of max shield that it gives you, you're still going to end up with a higher overall shield amount than if you were to use any of the other mods. So I use this. Focus on non-attribute because it increases your skill power. Kyle is somebody who has really high skill power modifiers, so you don't really invest in that. You just want to invest into skill power itself because the scales better. And it also gives you skill cooldown, which, like I said before, is really useful. Next up, we have Spear and Shield. A lot of people are saying you don't need defenses. Defenses in this game are a little wonky. I am currently sitting on 4,000 with the mod. But buffed, I'm at around I think like 8,500 or something, or 8,200, which gets me through pretty much the entire game. Like nothing ever really does enough damage to actually kill me or worry me unless I'm really not paying attention or I mess up somewhere. It also gives skill power, like I said, which is really good. Nimble Fingers gives you skill cooldown. We want to get as much cooldown as we can because there are kind of like some breakpoints we want to get to, so that way we can use things more fluidly. Multi-talented as well. If you really want to, you can replace this. I like using it because it gives you a pretty high skill cooldown because we use both dimension and tech skills. So whenever you use a dimension active skill, you get a further reduction of 20.5%, which puts us really close to the cooldown reduction cap, which is around 90%. With all these together, we're sitting at around 88.7, which is like 1.3 away from cap, which means that after using a dimension ability, the cooldown here goes from 19.1 seconds to 6.8 seconds. The absolute lowest you can get to is around 6 seconds if you're at an actual 90%, but I don't really care too much about 0.8 of a second, so I don't invest into the extra cooldown there. Finally, we have increased shield, obviously, because we want to maximize our shield. And then here I use mid-air maneuvering. Before I used to use multi-maneuvering, but mid-air maneuvering in this current season with this build is the best, I think, simply because of, like I mentioned before, the inversion reinforcement. Inversion reinforcement, basically it gives you like some mods you can use throughout the season as you unlock them. One of those mods being a recovery maneuver, which here it says, when using the grappling hook, grants a recovery maneuver. Recovery maneuver recovers shield by 2.5 of max shield every 0.1 seconds while using the grappling hook. So with mid-air maneuvering, that means I can pretty much use my grappling hook anywhere, which is really useful. Like if you're fighting an intercept boss, for instance, because you're always so up close and everything, you may not always have something to grapple onto, and you don't want to get blocked or anything like that. You can grapple away really quickly or easily. So I'll show you how much it recovers and a little trick to when you're using it. So right now I'm sitting at around 6,000 shield or so, and so I can just do this, and now you'll see that I got me from 6,000 to around 13,000, close to 13,000, like 12,800, which means I recovered pretty much like 20% of my max shield there. Also, just to keep in mind, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when I did the grappling, to keep your time in grappling high, don't grapple just straight, always come at an angle, so that way you stay in your grappling hook pretty much for as long as possible. Yeah, with the inclusion of all of these, it makes a shield build like this a lot more viable. There's also the shield particle augmentation, which when you're mobbing, for instance, it gives you an extra 33% max shield. So if I were to bring mobs in here, ready, off. So I'm currently sitting at max shield 31,000. Now when I get my full 5 stacks, it brings it up to 33,000 or 33.9 thousand, which is not a small amount. The only thing that sucks is that it's not reliable to use during intercepts unless you're killing mobs. But if you're killing mobs, that means you're not focusing the boss. You're not really DPSing. So it's not as reliable, but it does give you a little bit of a shield boost there. Next up, we have our reactor and our external components. Reactor, I'm using the Secret Garden mounting because I think the Secret Garden is like the best in slot weapon to use when you're using Kyle. You can use other weapons, maybe like a Python or something, because you're close to getting weak point shots isn't super hard for a lot of the intercept bosses. Some of them may be a little more difficult, but I think Secret Garden is the best, and I'll go over that in a second. But yeah, I get the materialized mechanic reactor, which is non-attribute skill power and tech skill power, because we want to boost the damage of our 4 as much as possible. But the substats, mine aren't that great. I've just been too lazy to farm a new one. But you would want to go with non-attribute skill power and additional skill attack when attacking Colossus if you are someone who plans on using Kyle for intercept battles. If not, then just non-attribute and tech together, like as your substats are fine. You can go skill cooldown, that's perfectly fine too if you want to like actually cap yourself and just have, like the lowest cooldowns you can. I still think that it's best to just get gold at non-attribute skill power boost and then gold tech skill power boost. If you can't get non-attribute skill power boost and a gold like additional skill attack when attacking Colossus, then that also is perfectly fine as well, just to have non-attribute and tech. I think like a gold roll for a power boost is around like 2,200 for the additional skill attack anyway. So it's like it won't give you the absolute most damage, but it'll still be a suitable replacement. For your external components, your best in slot here is going to be the regular ultimate HP support auxiliary power mod, or auxiliary power component, because it's the only auxiliary power that gives you the highest amount of max HP you can get for your main stat. No other auxiliary power gives you as much. The second closest that you can farm pretty easily would be, I think it's like the polar auxiliary power, or it's one of the intercept bosses, but it only gives you 4d4. So you end up losing about, like, I don't know, close to like 900 shield. This one's a little annoying to farm right now. It's currently on rotation. Fury power. It's currently on rotation. All of these missions are really bad. Like to get it, like this is a barrier deactivation, but it doesn't spawn monsters that reliably. Like it's pretty slow. I didn't really bother with any of these other ones, if I'm being completely honest, just because I didn't want to. So I just ended up doing the fusion reactor instead. The fusion reactor in this area spawns a boss that after you remove one health bar, it spawns like 2 waves of monsters. I think it's like, you know, eight spawns, so 16 every time. And those monsters can drop the component itself, and so can the boss. And with the new changes, you don't need the shards to actually activate it anymore. You can just activate it whenever you want to, and you only use shards when you use the orb. So but it's only on rotation for right now, as of right now, like another day and 10 hours, I think. So if you're seeing this video right now, like when I first posted, then go crazy and farm it. If not, then best of luck to you. Next one here, you can use the HP support sensor. This one's also currently on rotation for the next day in a couple hours. You want to get max HP again as well. And for the substats, I didn't mention before, but for the substats here, you want to get max HP and then fire resistance. For this one here, you want to get chill resistance and shield recovery out of combat. People say resistances don't matter. They, for the most part, don't. But again, you don't really have any other stats you can get. If you're farming, if you plan on using him to farm, then yeah, you can go for, you know, whatever the modifiers are for consumables and Kuiper, etc. But since I typically use him more for like invasions and all those things, and I don't really use him as a farmer because I have, you know, Bunny. I use him just more for content that requires you to be a little more tanky and a little you know, just not die, like intercepts. Here I'm using the Annihilation Memory. This is the easiest one to farm because it comes from Devourer, and Devourer is probably the most bullied intercept hard mode boss at this point. So I would yeah, you get max HP. It comes max HP no matter what. For here, I currently have shield recovery in combat and electric resistance, but if I'm being honest, I think the best would be defense and electric resistance. Shield recovery in combat doesn't matter when you're sitting on this high of have a shield, because like the extra like what 5 per second is going to recover 100 shield every 20 seconds, right? So like but at the same time, you with recovery maneuver, we can just grapple every 20 seconds and gain 20%. So defense is probably the best, and then electric resistance as well, so that we can mitigate as much damage as you can. Shield builds are unreliable in terms of how often you can recover your shield, unless you're using something like shield collector or something. So anything that can mitigate the damage so we don't have to recover our shield as often is pretty good. Finally, I have Slayer Processor here. So yeah, you kind of have options. You can, I'm using Slayer Processor because I wanted to get the max amount of shield. You can use Annihilation Processor, and it gives you the little 2-set bonus with a 5.7% skill duration, which makes your magnetic spurt basically lasts 1 second longer, which is pretty nice. You do lose around like 900 shield for this though, so just keep that in mind. But I have for this, I just get max shield and toxin resistance. Max shield for obvious reasons. Toxin resistance, because like I mentioned, mitigating damage is just important. You don't want to get like one shot by anything random. So all these are all pretty easy to farm. These two are going to be on rotation. If you can't get this one, Frozen Heart, I believe, is an option, but Frozen Heart you get from Frostwalker, and if you're having trouble with, you know, pubs or you don't have a group to farm with, that can be kind of annoying. So just keep that in mind. Finally, we have weapons. Again, like I mentioned before, I think Secret Garden is the best in slot because of its unique ability. Unique ability allows you to, when using a dimension skill, recover your custom resource, so you get your magnetic force. And when you use a tech skill, which is our 1 and our 4, it gives you stacks that increase your skill power. So at max stacks, which is pretty easy to get, you end up with around 53% extra skill power, which translates to around like a 10% damage increase on your 4, depending on the mob, anywhere from 6 to 10%, maybe a little more, but it's in that general area, which isn't bad. Obviously, like eking out any extra damage you can is pretty important. And this one is pretty useful because it allows you to recover your resource. It may not be as reliable in terms of trigger rate, but you can still recover your resource without having to use your one, right? So or your tackle. Otherwise, the only way to get your resource up is to land a tackle on something. So this weapon gives you the kind of the best of both worlds when it comes to that. It also has pretty decent stats in terms of damage. It has a really high It has a really high base crit, which is like 50%. And it has really high firearm crit damage and weak point damage multipliers. You just kind of stack into those. Mine isn't built the way I want it to be yet. I'm just too lazy to kind of redo it. It's good enough, but if you're trying to ultra min max, then there are some changes you can make here that I'll post in a build planner. Other than that, for your secondary weapons or your third, just use whatever. I think having a general rounds weapon is pretty important. One of the downsides to Secret Garden is that special rounds aren't as plentiful, and you will probably, if the fight is lengthy, you probably will have to kill some of the mobs during an intercept in order for you to fully use it all the time, which kind of is a problem, especially with how the mounting works. Otherwise, yeah, just use a general rounds weapon if you run out of ammo, and then go from there. I was testing the Excava out. I think it's a horrible weapon. They need to change it. There's just no upside to using it. There's just, even with its unique ability, that's besides the point. There was a little bit of a gameplay showcase earlier when I showcased like me tanking Gluttony. But I will do a quick intercept to show you guys how he plays out. Like I said, it's a very active play style to play him, and it's really important that you're very aware of all of your things. It may be a little harder to play on console or on controller if you want to do the absolute most damage as you can, because you'll have to be really close and adjusting your aim to try and hit the weak points as much as possible. So before the intercept starts, like I mentioned before, you just spam your 2 and your 3, and you'll see that I'm pretty much gaining resource here, and I have enough to already use my 4, like before the fight has even started, right? I'm gonna go up, tackle. You can stack up some more of your you can stack up more of your buff for your Secret Garden, and then go from there. But I just like using it whenever. Alright, reload. I probably could have killed him now if I had been watching my cooldowns. I could have landed one more 4 on him and then killed him. That would have been my fastest Devourer kill. But yeah, again, that's why you have to be very mindful of your buffs. I wasn't looking at my buffs because I was too busy talking and showcasing things. But yeah, he would have been dead already. So he's not, again, if you're looking for a bosser, I mean, obviously there are better characters like Glay or Ultimate Lepic or Haley now, stuff like that. But if you're looking for someone who's just kind of reliable to play for all forms of content, then I think Kyle is very effective. One second. There we go. That's probably one of my longer kills. Yeah, that's kind of how he plays. You always want to be looking to make sure that you have your buff there on the side, the little clock. The moment, if it's about to drop or anything like that, then don't use your ult just yet. Just wait for it to reset and then use it. There's a way to use your ult where if you hit your target, you don't get locked into some stupid animation. So let me show you really quickly. So normally, for that there, as you can see, I was able to just fall and I was fine. I was able to move afterwards. That's kind of what you want to aim for, because it allows you to get a tackle in as you're falling, and then because of the multi-talented buff, you can typically put your spurt back on right as you land, and so you don't really have any downtime. But if you don't land, if you hit the ground, or if you don't land right, for instance, you'll just end up doing this animation, and I can't move here. Like, I'm locked, right? So you're locked for like 2 seconds. So knowing how to hit your targets, like you kind of want to hit them on the side, like in a flat way there, so that way you can just fall or you can recover a little quicker. I think it's a stupid thing. They probably should just change that. You shouldn't have to be locked into place. I mean, I get that it's cool, like superhero type animation, but something to be aware of. That way you can play optimally. But yeah, that's it for my guide, guys. If you have any questions, comments, leave them below. If there are other characters you want to see me put a guide up for, let me know too. I do plan on making a Jaber guide because he's been interesting me lately. Yeah, you guys take care. Good luck out there, and I'll see you guys next time.